Thank you so much, sir. Could you tell us your name?
Howard Westin.
Howard Westin. And
With an I.
With an I. And can you tell me when you served?
Served from 1946 to 1948, 3 years.
3 years. And where were you?
Army Air Corps, 2 years in Vienna, Austria.
Vienna, Austria.
Right after the end of the war.
Over there to implement the Marshall Plan.
The Marshall Plan, and very successfully I was able to see how Germany, with the aid of the Marshall Plan, went from total destruction, blockbuster bombing, to complete restoration by the time I left in later 48.
Really? That's amazing. How did that happen? Just millions of people working to build it.
You know, it's amazing. The German people were certainly very, very much at one. Of course, from a pretty well conditioned society to being totally reconditioned by the events of the war. It was interesting to see them coming back.
Right.
And at that time, there were the four powers that were dividing up Germany and dividing Austria. And I lived in the Russian zone. I was in the Army Air Corps and in what was formerly a Pan-American base that had been taken over by the Germans during the war.
Oh, wow.
So that was interesting.
So what were your duties there? Because you were a pilot, right?
No, I was not a pilot. I was an enlisted man. And I was in the weather service, and I was giving out information as to the weather, climate, and all that around the Alps and so forth.
Were they flying a lot there? I mean, was there a lot going on?
By that time, it was mostly all transportation. We had the Charlie 47, 46 planes that brought in supplies, but the tension was still there in terms of the four powers: Russian, U.S., French, and British. And then during the tail end, I went up to the Fossburg, Germany on TDA for what was called the airlift, the Berlin airlift. And so I was a part of that.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
That was a lot of fun.
Tell me about that.
Well, just about every minute there was a plane leaving from Rhine-Main?
Or Ramstein?
Rhine-Main Airfield.
Yeah.
That's right in early France. Right. Oh, Frankfurt, that's right. And that was going back and forth to Berlin with supplies, coal, and everything else. And it was a real thing to see those planes taking off on a minute or 3 minutes, coming back, flying in, flying out.
Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable.
And they did it for how many years? What, 25, 30 years?
Well, actually, no. The Berlin airlift itself, sooner or later, through the Marshall Plan and the development, the German people of West Germany pretty well took independent control of their land.
Right.
And East Germany remained, and then the wall came down in Reagan's term, tear down the wall and all that stuff.
89.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Wow, so what's your most memorable experience from being in the war?
Well, maybe my naivete, how little I knew about Europe. Although my parents were immigrants from northern Sweden, and I had the opportunity to go to their homeland up there on various leaves. But the most memorable occasions that I would have would be seeing particularly Munich, we call it München in German, and to see when I arrived in that portion of Germany, Austria, that total destruction. And when I left, it was completely cleaned up, and the new building of what we know now to be the case had its foundations.
Yeah.
So that was the most memorable.
Yeah. I saw the hall where Hitler did his, the hall I think was still standing because when I saw it, the hall was there, the brew hall.
Yes. Brahmaster.
Yeah, where he did his thing. Yeah. He had his sort of group meet, and they started.
Yeah.
Amazing.
By the way, I am also a violinist from the time I was 6 years old, but I picked up a violin in the black market. Unfortunately, I'm almost ashamed of it, but in the black market I paid 10 cartons of cigarettes and 1,000 Austrian shillings for a violin that I still have today. I played it in the village's philharmonic and played all over and so forth. And that for me is a happy occasion.
Yeah.
An Austrian forecaster brought it to my attention, and that's when I purchased the violin.
Right.
So
Austria is beautiful.
it's marvelous. The hills, and we used to take, we were in the village of Langaleba, which was on the outskirts in the Russian zone, and we would take the train into Vienna, Austria. And there we would have our mutiny night and our song fests and beer gardens and so forth and so on.
Have you ever been back?
I've been back to not so much Germany, but Sweden, and went on a Baltic Sea tour that took me up into from Denmark, Copenhagen, and took me to all the Scandinavian countries, Finland and so forth. In Russia, we went up the river there, St. Petersburg River, and so forth and so on. And I had a delightful time.
Wonderful. And how old are you now?
Right now, I'm going to celebrate 88 in October.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's been wonderful talking to you, sir, and thank you so very much for coming to the museum and spending time with us today.
Well, Ray, who is this responsible man for us, he left a note in my paper and said, "We're going to be here through Saturday. You better make it." So that's why I'm here.
Oh, that's great. We're so glad you did. Thank you, sir.